I downloaded the Neo demo on its last day, and I've made a mistake. This game is amazing, and I have less than 24 hours to play it. So I open my notepad, I start taking a few notes on the game, and then I discard that idea because I do not intend on putting this controller down. I have this legitimate hunger for the combat, just to dive in and kill enemies and push a little bit further than I got last time, and that's a damn good sign. So here's what I learned, and here's what I was impressed with from my short time playing. In this game, stamina is called ki, and it's key that you manage your ki and the ki of your opponent. With this new information, you have the power to see how far your enemy can exert themselves, when they're about to overextend, and when the right moment is to overwhelm them and punish them. Right off the bat, this adds a huge depth to the combat system, but most importantly, perhaps, Stamina Vision affords you this reassuring feeling that the opponents you're facing are operating on the same rules that you are as a player. The game itself isn't trying to kill you, the AI within the game are, and I think that's a humanizing rule of design that more games should follow, especially games like this that go even beyond Dark Souls in terms of how hard they are. An additional mechanic to make stamina more interactive is the ki pulse. If you press R1 a moment after expending your ki, then you'll perform this pulse, which immediately regenerates the ki you just expended. The amount is signified by this fast-moving blue bar. And doing this pulse properly forces this flow upon combat, which, if followed appropriately, gives you a huge ki advantage over your opponents. And it just allows you to attack like an absolute demon, provided you can keep up the appropriate pacing. Also, this pulse can cleanse the aura given off by enemies from the yokai realm. It's this black fog that, if you step in it, stops you regenerating your ki. So performing the pulse to cleanse this felt to me like a forceful way of teaching me that the ki pulse habit is probably one I should get into. Unfortunately, I didn't during my time in the demo, and I have a huge feeling I made the game much harder for myself because I didn't start doing this. But anyway, all of this makes Neo the first Souls-like game that I've played that puts stamina at the very core of the game where it rightfully belongs. This fits into this combat system that rewards awareness, and it's not just awareness of stamina, it's also awareness of the attacks of enemies, of course. And in these kinds of games, enemy attacks should have two parts. There's the forecast of the attack, and then there's the attack itself. There's this raising or lowering of the weapon, then the swing, allowing you to predict and react. The animation is fantastic, for the most part, except on some of the larger monsters. For example, this one boss had this spin attack that I never really felt like I deserved getting hit by, and they need to be careful to get this right, because I think it's the most important thing about the combat. One thing that took a lot of getting used to is the sheer variety of movesets that are available to both you and your opponents. In Neo, there is a selection of weapon classes like spear, hammer, katana, and dual katana, and while every weapon within that class appears to share the same moveset, every class of weapon can be held in one of three stances. So high stance gives you powerful but slower attacks, low stance gives you fast but weaker attacks, and mid stance is predictably the balance between the two. And in each stance, you still have access to light and heavy attacks, and these attacks are different depending on what stance you're in. So basically you can swap attack style on the fly, and that feels fantastic. It's quite like Bloodborne in that regard. Just instead of having 2 weapon states, every weapon has 3 weapon states, and it means you can proactively adapt to combat in a way that you never really do in Souls games, giving you access to thrust attacks, overhead attacks, fast attacks, slow attacks, all regardless of the weapon you're using. And you might already be thinking about this, but the obvious risk here is that because you can cover the weaknesses of every single weapon by changing stances, that weapons might struggle to feel unique. Because what's the point in using a great hammer if I can just put it in a light stance to attack quickly, or what's the point of using dual katanas if I can put it in a slow stance to make them more powerful? So yeah, this does affect the individuality of weapon classes. And sure, you could argue that yes, the low stance of the dual katanas is still faster than the low stance of the great hammer, but there's so much coverage here, and this approach does mean that weapons lose some individuality. But do I want it changed? Nope. Like I said, it feels fantastic to have complete control of your weapon, and the only thing holding you back in combat is really your awareness and your knowledge of how well your stance will fit the situation. I think that build diversity is going to struggle a bit in the long run because of this, but there is so much depth to the combat that I don't see this being a big issue. And for all the individuality weapons lose from stances, they do gain some character back with the option to learn weapon-specific abilities. You can invest talent points into new abilities which are specific to each weapon class, like the powerful spin attack of the Great Hammer or the wily trip attack of the spear. And also, you can find the same type of weapon with different rarities and attributes, and that helps make your weapon feel a bit more unique. I'd also like to praise the level design, particularly for the way that these felt like real coastlines, real villages, real forests, and I liked the way they blended environments together, and all the while they were hiding a bunch of Estus shards, physical shortcuts, and, most notably, ambushes. Because of these, I was progressing slowly, peeking around corners and just listening for that audio cue that signals you're in trouble. There was no real cue for this happening, however. And speaking of falling, I like how knocking enemies off edges was actually encouraged by the level design and the combat, because if you strike an enemy towards the edge, then they'll clip into this falling animation that's incredibly satisfying to pull off. And this ability to jostle for space and knock enemies off ledges, it's supported by the combat much more than in Souls, because if you hit an enemy in this game, or if you take a hit, there is a lot more backstep and movement during attacks that you need to take into account. Now, it is possible to comfortably run past enemies, but this demo had a lot of decent choke points. That's something that Dark Souls never does well. You can always sprint past stuff and then initiate the invincibility frames when you're opening a door, but no. In this game, if you're climbing a ladder and you get hit once, you fall off, and good luck killing a mini-boss that's a required kill when you're followed by all the enemies that you've accrued from running for 5 minutes straight. I was always punished for fighting in unfamiliar territory, and that's a good thing. You're also rewarded for fighting some enemies, as the yokai monsters don't respawn if you've killed them once, which allows them to serve as a sort of soft checkpoint system. And I probably shouldn't talk about the game too much longer because I didn't get enough time with Neo to talk confidently about it, but man, considering how much fun I had with it and how hyped I am for it now, I just couldn't resist making a video. But rest assured, when this game does come out on February 19th, 2017, I will try to make the best damn Neo video you've ever seen, but for now I'm going to direct you over to 3 channels. There's Terramantis' channel, he has a great video on Neo's multiplayer, and I'm going to direct you to a smaller channel I found called Hustle Habit for a chilled out discussion about the depth in the game, and also Silvermont has this fantastic video talking about how well the developer listened to feedback since their previous demo, which you really do have to give the dev props for. From his video, I got the impression that they literally took his advice on some topics, and they've even reached out to me to hear what scant feedback I have, and that's super humbling and very promising. We've covered a few Souls-like games at this point. Some of them take the Souls formula and they apply it cleverly to an entirely different 2D perspective. Some take a few elements, they twist them, and they build them up and turn the game into something else, and sometimes something better. These little risks show how the formula of Souls can be improved, and they're the way these games can continue to feel fresh. and I'm expecting a lot of great things from Nioh when I pick it up for PS4. So thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you in the next one.